Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Yamo Media's Hey Bucks. I'm your host, Drew Sample, and I'm joined as always by my good friend, Andy Evans. And we're honored to have Dan Hope of 11 Warriors on the show. Welcome to the show, Dan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
Oh, the pleasure is all ours. That was awesome. Yeah, right when the show starts. Hey, Dan, thanks. Let me get a bunch of feedback noise from my microphone. That was incredible. I'm so professional here. So yeah, Dan, I know you're tight on time here. So yesterday, Minnesota came into town. OSU looked incredibly dominant. I thought that we would actually get a bigger start to the game like we did last week. It didn't really go that way, but we still looked dominant throughout the game. What were your thoughts overall on the game yesterday and how the Buckeyes looked?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I was expecting a little bit more of a dominant first half, but I think to come out in the second half the way Ohio State did, scoring 3 times in the first 5 minutes of the second half, I think that was a really good thing to see. I think, clearly I'm sure the message at halftime was, hey, let's go out there, take care of business, get this thing over with so we can move on to next week. And that's exactly what Ohio State did. So at the end of the day, you're never going to complain about a 37-3 win. I think, but two important things. One, they won comfortably. Two, came out of a game with no major injuries, which was certainly as important as anything yesterday because it doesn't get any bigger than the game coming up this week.
All right. I think that covers Minnesota. We know why you're here, Dan. We got you here because it is the week, the big week, the week why we watch every single game and we criticize the Buckeyes all year long for this one game with the team up north, the filthy rodents, as our friend Andy Evans here likes to call them.
Smelly rodents.
Let's talk the smelly rodents. Okay, I'll call them the
filthy, smelly, dirty, whatever. Yeah, it's all the same.
So the last few weeks, I mean, this whole season with Michigan and all this scandal, everything of all the talks of Michigan is just making this game bigger and bigger and bigger. I was really looking forward to the Buckeyes just having this huge chip on our shoulder, going up there with this chip. Everybody expecting them to dominate us. Now, Michigan's even stealing our slogans of Ohio versus the world. They're saying Michigan versus the world. I mean, they can't even be creative when they're trying to have a chip on their shoulder. So what are your thoughts on this scandal, Dan? Do you think they're sign stealing? I mean, there's talks of them hacking into our system and getting 40 or 60 hours of practice footage. What do you think of all this? I mean, going into this week, I mean, let's break it down.
Well, I think it's well established that Michigan is sign stealing in some capacity. Now, what the NCAA is obviously trying to determine is how much of that sign stealing operation is actually in violation of NCAA rules. And it certainly seems as though NCAA rules have been broken. The fact that, Connor Stallions has been proven to have purchased tickets to games all over the country. The fact that there's evidence of people sitting in the seats that Connor Stallions purchased and using those to film the opponent's signals. Scouting opponents in person and filming the opponent's signals are both NCAA violations. And so, if those things happen, then Michigan broke the rules. We don't necessarily know, who all beyond Connor Stallions was involved in this operation. And I think that's a big part of Michigan's defense is that, Jim Harbaugh didn't necessarily know what was going on, that not everybody in the program was necessarily in on what was happening. But at the minimum, you had a staffer working on your behalf, sending people to games around the country and filming opponent signals, which is certainly very much in violation of NCAA rules. And the fact that, Michigan was going to fight that suspension that the Big Ten gave Jim Harbaugh and then decided on Thursday to back down and accept the suspension tells you that the evidence is mounting against Michigan and that Michigan realized that fight in court was not one they were going to win.
Yeah. What do you think they needed to steal these signs? Do you think that, I mean, there's just so much. I mean, how much I think for as like I try to bring like the fan perspective here because you guys are the journalists. What do you like? I think a lot of people have it in their head that like they only beat us because of sign stealing and everything else like that. Do you think that that's something they needed to do to beat us? Do you think that it's going to be a difference this weekend? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that because I think even without all the sign stealing stuff, like Michigan's had a really good team the past few years. Like Michigan has had a lot of really good players, and so to me, I think it's too simplistic to say Michigan only beat Ohio State because they stole signs. I mean, stealing signs didn't make Ohio State missed tackles that lead to 75-yard touchdowns. I mean, I think it was a factor, and I think the reality is with what's been alleged that those wins by Michigan over the last 2 years, they have an asterisk on them because it certainly appears that Michigan broke the rules and was able to use things that they gained impermissibly to their advantage to beat Ohio State. And so it certainly puts an asterisk on those games, but I don't necessarily think that Michigan needed to do it. I mean, I also think that, Ohio State was stealing Michigan signs too. They just weren't doing it in a way that broke NCAA rules. And so I don't, it's really hard to quantify what the sign stealing advantage was. I think fair or not, how this week's game goes is probably going to have some influence on the perception of that. I think if Ohio State wins, it's going to be a lot easier for people to go back and say, yeah, well, Michigan only beat Ohio State because they had Ohio State signs. Whereas if Michigan wins this week, after Connor Stallions is gone, obviously, Michigan still might be benefiting from some of what it got from that sign stealing scheme, but I think it would be harder for Ohio State fans to use that excuse if Michigan wins again this week.
Yesterday's close call against Maryland, do you think that made them look guilty with the 31-24 final score? Or do you think it's just Maryland plays teams tough at home? I mean, they're not a bad team. They gave us a lot of problems early on in the horseshoe. What were your thoughts on Michigan and their performance yesterday?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go back to last year, Ohio State had to play at Maryland the week before the Michigan game, and that was a tough game that they didn't seal until a defensive touchdown in the final seconds. I mean, you go back to 2018 when Ohio State had to play at Maryland before a Michigan game. Ohio State needed overtime to win that game. And so, yeah, I think a lot of it to me on that is just, Maryland, plays teams tough, and it's not something new. I don't think in any way you can draw a conclusion from that and go, that proves Michigan was cheating. I think, maybe Michigan was looking ahead a little bit. Maybe, Michigan was, maybe they're still kind of learning how to play without Jim Harbaugh as their coach. And this was one of the tougher opponents they've had to play without Jim Harbaugh as their coach. So there's a lot of factors that can go into that. But I don't look at it and go, oh, that proves Michigan was cheating. I just look at it and go, well, that proves Michigan is beatable.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of it is, not having all. I think there's a big emotional dump with all the Harbaugh. We're not going to have coach this game. We're not going to have coach against the Buckeyes. And so I think for me a little bit, it's a little bit scarier knowing that hey, they had a gut wrenching win where they really had to gut it out in Maryland without their head coach, and now their final game is at home against us in a loud big house. What do you think OSU is going to need to do to win this weekend?
Yeah, I think there's a few keys to this game. I think, games like this, usually the trenches make a big difference in who wins or loses a game. So I think, number one, Ohio State's offensive line has got to play well. Ohio State has to be able to run the ball, and they have to be able to hold up in pass protection. Obviously, I think the offensive line has been the biggest question mark on this team all year. And so I think how the offensive line fares in this game is going to play a huge part in whether Ohio State can win this game. I think defensively, I think stopping the run is going to be the key because we have seen it here these last couple of weeks as Michigan's finally played some close games that they want to rely on their run game. They don't necessarily want to put the game in J.J. McCarthy's hands to have to make plays passing the ball. So I think if Ohio State can force Michigan into a situation where Michigan's got to pass the ball to win the game in the fourth quarter, I think you feel pretty good if you're Ohio State. Obviously, they did try to do some of that last year in terms of forcing Michigan to beat them through the air. But the difference is I think Ohio State's defensive backs are a lot better this year than they were a year ago. And so I think that's a game plan, but while it didn't work for Ohio State a year ago, I think it can work this year in terms of stopping the run and forcing Michigan to beat them through the air because Ohio State's defense has just been so much better this year. And then the third thing is Kyle McCord's got to be sharp. We've seen plenty of inconsistency from Kyle McCord as Ohio State's quarterback. You know, if he plays like he did a couple weeks ago against Michigan State, I think Ohio State can absolutely win this game. I think if Kyle McCord is off his game and he makes mistakes, that could cost Ohio State the game. So I think, you know, big things are you gotta win the trenches and you got to take care of football.
Absolutely. I think everybody as Ohio State, I mean, even like my family that's, you know, I'm from Toledo, so I have some family that unfortunately are Michigan fans. And they even say, I mean, like, hey, you know, OSU's finally playing physical football again. Like I mean, one thing I noticed is the last couple of weeks, I mean, how many injuries you see or guys walking slow off the field on the other side of the field, like so Minnesota or Michigan State. Not that I'm like happy to see these players getting hurt, but it shows kind of like just the toughness of the Buckeyes this year. Like they're playing a lot more aggressive. They're playing. I mean, we feel it on Wednesdays when we're down there, and just you know when you guys are interviewing these players. I mean, there's definitely like a seeming of like we're a physical football team. We're here to hit you guys in the mouth and play hard. Our producer just actually let me know that he has footage of Michigan yesterday using signs to block cameras. Okay, here we go. So they're blocking cameras. I don't know. What do you guys think of this? Can you guys
I'm not sure if that was just trolling or if there was some strategic reason to do that. Like I don't know if maybe that was just them trying to make some kind of point.
I mean, Harbaugh's been trolling this whole time. I mean, with his interviews and talking about chickens and how like I mean the AI Harbaughs of him admitting to stealing signs are hilarious and they're well done. But his own interviews are just hilarious. I mean, he's talking about, yeah, I like chickens. They're so excited to see me and they're good egg layers. And he's just talking about nothing. And it seems like just to troll, oh, whenever I get sick, I just get a good workout in. Thanks, coach. Coach gave me a great workout today. I'm feeling great. And it's just like I feel like a lot of it is them trolling and playing off of this. But it's pretty funny. Like just putting signs up like it's like they've just been trying to say F you the whole time to the NCAA and the Big Ten and everybody else. Andy, do you have anything to add? Dan's got to go and get out of here, so I don't. You know, I've been a mic hog over here, even though we're asking Dan questions.
Hey, the reason that we asked Dan to come on was to get his absolute eclectic, professional opinion, advice, whatever you want to call it. I'm just sitting here. You know, Dan and I, we actually go a little ways back. We had classes together at Ohio State in the journalism program there. We now obviously, you know, quasi work together as far as the Ohio State football beat. So I'm just sitting here just listening to Dan and everything that he says. And I know we're going to get into it a little bit more, just you and I, because, yeah, Dan's got to take off. But a lot of what he said is true, and I'm sure I'll resonate some of that a little bit later. But otherwise, you know, Dan's the man. You know, I want to try and get guests on, or, you know, we want to try and get guests on that know what the hell they're talking about. And, yeah, when you're talking about a dude who knows Ohio State football, he's got his pulse on the beat. It's Dan Hope of 11 Warriors, dude. He's one of the go-to guys for sure. And I'm not just saying that because he's a good guy and a friend and he's on the show right now. I really do mean that. If you don't know about Dan Hope, which you've been living under a rock, then go check out his stuff on 11 Warriors. It's good. It's good, informative stuff for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, Andy. You're far too kind.
What? Thank you. Oh yeah, in amazing Ohio, and thank you, Adam, for these great messages.
Yeah. That is
Dan,
awesome.
anything else you want to add? Thanks for joining us today. Anything else you want to add about Michigan? What is scary? What do you see? I guess I mean we're all pro Ohio State over here. Like what is most concerning to you this week? This upcoming Saturday. Like what is uneasy? Like what do you have an uneasy feeling about going into this week?
Well, I mean, it sounds very simple, but like Michigan's really good. Like, I mean, it's just like, I mean, this is a team like if you're gonna beat this Michigan team, you're gonna have to play a complete game, and that hasn't necessarily been true for anyone Ohio State's had to beat so far this season. I mean, this is a Michigan team that I mean, I think Michigan and Ohio State right now have the two best defenses in the country, and Michigan's offense is probably the best offense is faced all year. And so this is going to be the test of all tests for Ohio State this season. I think, for as impressive as Ohio State has been for 11 games, the reality is we really still don't know how good this Ohio State team is until noon on Saturday. Those 3.5 hours on Saturday in Ann Arbor are going to reveal a story of how good this Ohio State football team actually is. And so, I think Ohio State is capable of winning this game, but I think that it's going to require pulling out all the stops. And I think I just not going to know whether that's going to happen until the game actually starts.
I agree. The biggest concern I have is when it comes down to defensive struggle, if it's like kind of because, what we saw a lot in the Notre Dame Penn State games was a back and forth. The defense is really just kind of dominating, hitting each offense in the mouth. The scariest thing for me right now is Michigan's defense scores a lot more points than the Buckeyes defense does. I mean, we even saw it yesterday. If that defense hadn't played the way it was, Michigan would have lost that game. I mean, they were responsible for 9 points right off the bat. They got that touchdown, and then they got a safety. And we don't like we make stops, but we don't really get a ton of takeaways. We don't. I mean, Jordan Hancock is leading our team with 2. One of them was a pick six. Thankfully, when we do turn the ball over, we do seem like if it's a pick, we do seem to get some pick sixes here and there, but it's just not consistent enough. So that for me is the biggest thing I'm scared about is if we do make mistakes offensively, which it's going to be, it's going to happen. I mean, Michigan just really just every time just taking advantage of it on defense and getting the ball and them scoring on us offensively, because if our defense might be able to shut down their offense, but that doesn't mean our offense can stop our defense from scoring. Their defense from scoring. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that in a game like this, but the turnover battle usually goes a big part in towards the game, and so I think certainly, this game could come down to which defense makes more big plays, which defense forces more turnovers, and so I think ball security is something that's always a point of emphasis for Ryan Day, but I think it needs to be an extra point of emphasis because, like you said, this is a Michigan defense that if you don't take care of a football, they can and usually will make you pay for it.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, Dan, it's Dan Hope, 11 Warriors. Read his articles. Follow him on X. He's at Dan_Hope. It's right there on the screen. Dan, thanks for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you this week, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and talk some Buckeyes with us.
Yeah, sure thing, guys. Thanks for having me, and we'll see you guys around.
Awesome. Hey, Danny, see you on Tuesday, buddy.
Sounds good, Andy. We'll see you there.
All right. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you coming on, man.
What a nice guy. Dan Hope, everyone.
Dan Hope. Dan is, once again, Dan and I, like I said, I mean, we go back a few years. We had classes together in the late 2000s, like 2010 to 2012 down there at Ohio State, the Ohio State. We're both graduates of the journalism program there. And I know he actually did some time down in South Carolina covering Clemson. And then he flipped back up here to Columbus, and now he's covering for Ohio State. And he does a phenomenal job. So he's just one of those dudes. He asks good questions in the pressers, and he gathers great content. And so once again, go check him out, man. He knows what he's talking about for sure. So love having him on, man. It's always good to have on a guest who knows what they're talking about, unlike me. So
you know what you're talking about. Just stop it. All right. So mini recap. 37-3, the stats. Ohio State, 434 total yards, 219 through the air, 215 on the ground. McCord, that quarterback, I don't know if he can get it done. He got sacked once, and he threw for 212 yards for 2 touchdowns, and he was only 20 for 30. He didn't even play the whole game. What another great game from McCord. I mean, I thought – keep going.
No, go ahead.
I'm really tired of people dogging him. I mean, McCord's a dog in a good way. He plays hard. He performs when we need him to. Like the final drive from Notre Dame. Just so much stuff. So TreVeyon Henderson looked amazing again. I mean, I'm eating a lot of crow on TreVeyon Henderson. I was not big on him earlier in the season. I thought he was playing soft. And he said, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. There's a reason why I'm so good. 15 rushing attempts, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a career-long 75-yard touchdown run, 2 catches for 26 yards. Marvin Harrison Jr., 3 catches on 6 targets, 30 yards, 1 touchdown, 13 receiving TDs on the year, tied for second in the nation. He is 5 away from tying Chris Olave, I think, for most touchdowns. Shout out to Chris Olave, man. He's so good. They're all good, though. All of our guys, it's like they're going into the league, and they have this – OSU players have this work ethic. And I feel like teams are basing around what they're doing around production of their good OSU players they're getting, like wide receiver-wise. Especially the Jets. Garrett Wilson's been – anyways, we're not talking about the NFL. Cade Stover, 4 catches for 26 yards, 1 touchdown. Came on the last play. He was on the field. Now he has 534 yards on the year and over 1,000 for his career. Only 3 tight ends in history for Ohio State have over 1,000 career receiving yards. Yeah. Some people picked the team to have 3 losses this year. I don't want to say who.
Those people are dumb. They're idiots, man. They just have no freaking clue what they're talking about.
Defense. There's this guy we were complaining about not seeing enough action from him earlier this year. Boy, did he have some big hits yesterday. Jack Sawyer. Holy cow. Holy cow, was Jack Sawyer a monster. My uncle Scott, he'd called me. And it was like early on because he was saying similar stuff you were. And he's like, what's up with with Jack Sawyer? He was so hyped. I'm like, yeah, it's like him finding his getting a hold of the Jim Knowles defense. That's what I think it is. I think we might have been right on that because we both said that. And now all of our defense is just look unstoppable.
The defense is finally coming into form at the right time of the year. I mean, they really are.
And that's what Ryan Day said. We're trying to play our best football at the end of the year, which is why
it ain't how you start. It's how you finish. Absolutely.
Jack Sawyer, 6 tackles with career best, 3.5 tackles for a loss, including a 3-yard strip sack recovered by JT Tuimoloau. Jordan Hancock, 1 interception, now 2 on the year, leads the team. We need some more interceptions and takeaways. That is something I know I already said it.
I believe they've only got now 11 on the year.
The way that Michigan defense plays, and like if the offense is struggling, that defense just like comes up with big ass plays. We saw it in the Indiana game when we were watching that together. Indiana was really hitting them in the mouth, giving them problems. Michigan get that big interception that shut down that offense, and it was just Indiana never recovered. Any more thoughts on this Minnesota game?
Going back to Kyle McCord and his performance, you look at the stats: 20 of 30, 66% of his pass. I mean, that's like typically an average. Like I don't want to say a high-end average, but an average. I think last year for the season and like the last couple of years, CJ Stroud was like 67% complete and 66% complete, like going into the postseason games. So you look at 66% complete for Kyle McCord yesterday. I mean, 212 yards, somewhat on the low end of yards, but I've said all year, if Kyle McCord can throw for like 250 to 275 and 2 touchdowns per game, that's good enough for me. It honestly is. So a little bit on the low end of yards, had a couple of TD tosses. However, there were a couple of instances yesterday that he got lucky. There were a couple of bad passes he threw, one over the middle that was like, you're just like, holy cow, where were you throwing? And if I'm not mistaken, it was a play where Minnesota blitzed their corner. Marvin Harrison Jr. was wide open, and McCord just didn't pick it up, didn't see him. And the safety was late getting over to provide the coverage for the blitzing corner. And had McCord seen that sooner, it would have been a touchdown to Marvin. And then there was another play where he threw to Xavier Johnson over the middle on a drag route, completed the pass, but he had Fleming trailing up the left side, and he could have hit Fleming over the top for a touchdown, and he missed that read too. So I think those are the kinds of plays where your McCord doubters, haters, whatever, are saying if you commit those kinds of errors against a team like Michigan, it's going to end badly. And to Dan's point, I mean, obviously remaining mistake-free in any game, you're typically going to win, right? I mean, you can commit some mistakes, still win the game. You can be mistake-free and still lose. I mean, look at the Georgia game last year. Ohio State didn't turn the ball over at all. They actually picked off Stetson Bennett, and they ultimately still lost the game. Now, not to say they didn't commit other mistakes like penalties and stuff like that, but just at least in the turnover battle. Typically, you turn the ball over more, you're going to lose. And if Kyle McCord doesn't bring his game, he looked off yesterday. To me, he looked off. And if he plays like that against Michigan, it could be a long day, because you've got to make the right reads at the right time and not get lucky throwing over the middle into double coverage and Minnesota not picking off that ball. I mean, it was like right there and just bounced off the defender's hands. So still, I'm gonna remain, true to my boy, Mr. McCord. I still think he has done what he's needed to do to be efficient enough, but he's definitely going to have to step it up come next week. But yeah, Travion, just the team as a whole, sluggish in the first half. Obviously, it's 13-0. Ryan Day's, clock's winding down, but he's trying to run this, hurry up offense with like 45 seconds left, gets a first down from Trey. And then with about 10 seconds left, he still runs, and like the clock's winding down. He's not calling any timeouts. The clock's running. He still wants to run, like try one last play, and McCord takes the sack, the 7-yard sack, the one sack he took all game, last play of the first half. I'm kind of thinking just sit on the ball, just kind of cut your losses, go into the locker room. Instead, you add a sack now to McCord's, however many times he's been sacked this year total. But like Dan said, the way that they came out and responded in the second half, I mean, they came out with their hair on fire. And just like in a season, same thing with the game. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And yes, he said he wanted to get a little bit of a quicker start, and you said the same thing. You would have liked to have seen a quicker start against Minnesota like they had against Michigan State. But ultimately, they beat Michigan State 38-3, and they beat Minnesota 37-3. So at the end of the day, it's almost basically the same result. It was just a little different in how they got there. But ultimately, I like the way that the team responded in the second half. Trey ripping off that run, dude. Yeah, I said it last night, my post-game recap there at the shoe. This Travion Henderson is a completely different. He's a completely different Trey from what we saw in the beginning of the year. Even the beginning of the year, he just did not look crisp to me. The way he was running, he just looked off. And like you said, we were doubting Trey. You know, we were just like, what is going on with this run game? And now all of a sudden, it's a completely different run game. Trey is reading the blocks. He's hitting the holes. He's cutting with authority. I mean, he looks like I have no idea what happened, but he just looks like a completely different Travion Henderson. And I mean, I think Buckeye Nation is absolutely ecstatic right now and has a ton more confidence in this run game that we didn't have at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that was always the thing. Like our run game in the goal zone was, we're going to run some plays with Devin Brown, and then he ends up getting hurt. We had chip and chop, and I was excited about that. That didn't do anything. And really all we need is just Travion Henderson, because that dude is running people over. He's running hard. If he needs a break, Chip Trainum comes in, gives him a little bit of a break. I'm happy with Chip Trainum. I mean, especially he's good. Get him some passes out of the backfield. The interesting thing with Kyle McCord now and the Buckeye offense is, with Travion Henderson back, we're seeing a lot less targets to Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, we went from like 15 a game to 6. So it's and now I'm like, we should throw him the ball more. He needs more opportunities.
Damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, right? I know yesterday, I mean, 6 targets. Once again, though, like, I mean, Michigan State, he played like one series in the third quarter, and then he was done. So, and they, they played a little bit longer yesterday, more into the third quarter than they did against Michigan State. But yeah, I mean, 3 catches, like you said, on 6 targets. 30 yards, still had a touchdown catch, which makes him second in the nation. So maybe they were just trying to reserve him a little bit for next weekend. I mean, certainly they didn't want to put him out there on the field in scrub time and get him hurt, reserve him that way. But yeah, I mean, let's face it, with the way that they changed the game clock with first downs, and it's now more of a running clock. It's basically, it's like the NFL. Where, you get a first down and you go out of bounds. Once the is set, the clock, it's run. So it takes away some plays. You've only got so many plays you can run in a game. And if Travion is running the way he's run, then why not give him the ball more? Let's feed him, man, feed him. So yeah, at the beginning of the year, I was skeptical. Trey's turned me into a believer, and now I honestly believe, give him the ball a little bit more if he's going to produce like he's been producing. I don't have a problem with taking away some targets from Marvin if Travion is essentially going to pick up the slack with the way he runs the football.
So Tommy Eichenberg didn't play. Ryan Day says he's returning. He said him and Tommy had a late night text war before the Michigan game about Tommy wanting to play
Minnesota.
Happening. Yeah, I mean, against Minnesota. Day ultimately talked him out of it, wants the best Tommy for Michigan. I think that was a great move. Day also said that they should be full go against the Wolverines, but didn't get too specific about other guys like Mike Hall Jr. and Lathan Ransom. Predictions. We got prediction time. I'm scared about this Michigan D. I am relieved, though. I'm wondering. I don't know. I want the best Michigan team to play us personally. Like, I'm a little bit bummed out that I'm not going to be there.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned this, because I was talking with a buddy last night, and he asked that very same question. Wouldn't you would you or would you not rather see Jim Harbaugh on the sideline? I want Michigan to be at their complete 100% peak. Like we've said, regardless of sign stealing, this is a phenomenal Michigan football team. Probably didn't even need to steal any damn signs. They could have, still won every game this year. May not have looked as good as some of their games have looked, especially on the D side of the ball, because their stats are just ridiculous this year. But having said all of that, I would much rather prefer old booger picking Jimmy Cax to be on that sideline with a fat finger up his nose, digging away, nervous as hell, because Ohio State is bringing it to his smelly road. So that's not going to be the case. And I don't want Michigan fans, if Ohio State, to use any excuse. Like Dan was saying, I think Michigan is in a lose-lose situation. He didn't say this, but he basically, alluded towards it. And my take on it is this, is that Michigan loses, they lose. And then they're going to make excuses. Well, our coach wasn't there, and that's why we lost. And, if it weren't for crying Ryan Day, we'd never be in this, because he's the one who had his brother investigate us. And, stop it, okay? Even if Ryan Day did have your head coach investigated for sign stealing, why did he have him investigated in the first place? Because there was evidence. We now clearly know that there was evidence that it was happening. So screw you. Fine. I ratted you out, because you want to know why? You were committing infraction in the first place. That's why I had you investigated. Once again, it's like the kid who got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Mommy and daddy tell him, no cookies before bed, Junior. And he's in there grabbing a cookie, and then they bust him. And they're like, what did we tell you? And he's like, well, you didn't put a latch on the cookie jar, so it's not my fault, your fault for doing that in the first place. It's just ridiculous, the excuses that they're trying up with. But I don't want them to use that as an excuse that Jim's not there, that's why we lost. But then again, if they do win, then guess what Ohio State fans can say? Well, you were stealing our signs anyways. You knew what plays we were going to run. So Michigan is in a lose-lose situation, for this game, quite honestly. Their fans are going to be in an uproar. It's just, yeah. But I want to see Jimmy on the sideline. I would rather see him there.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think and one thing I would say is isn't it pretty much knowledge that they found out about this because the FBI was investigating one of their coaches that was looking up child porn on a computer or something like that? Have you heard this?
Yes. I mean, the fact that the FBI was investigating Matt Weiss, who was on Harbaugh's coaching staff, they started investigating him at the beginning of the year. And I mean, we are talking about the FBI, folks. We're not talking about the Michigan State Police. We're not talking about Ann Arbor Police. We're not talking about the Ann Arbor campus police, whatever. I mean, we're talking about the freaking feds are in on this, dude. So when the feds get involved, and this wasn't to do with any sign stealing or anything like that, they were investigating Matt Weiss for computer hacking, computer crimes. That investigation still has yet to conclude. Is that what led to this? I mean, nobody knows. Everybody is speculating. Once again, Michigan fans crying Ryan Day's the one who ran out and had his brother's investigation firm look into it. We don't know. I would like to think that when the feds are involved, that could have led to this whole scandal. Is that the truth or not? I don't know. As far as why Matt Weiss is being investigated, I have heard the claim that there was, pornography of a disgusting nature on his computer. I think that's honestly just me personally, and it could come out that it's true. I hope to God it's not, even for Matt Weiss's sake, being a, Michigan coach. I mean, I don't want that to be true for anybody. It's unfortunate that sometimes that can be the case, but at any rate, I personally don't think that was what it was. I think that's just honestly it's internet social media rumor just kind of created by someone to try and smear his name. That's just my take on it. But yeah, I mean, the feds are investigating him. That is a fact.
There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a good chance. What sucks for me is like there's a good chance Harbaugh's not going to be back next year. So if Ryan Day does win, Ryan Day won't. Yeah, he'll have just one win against Harbaugh. He'll be 1-2 against Harbaugh technically, right? 2-2.
Where am I at? There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Dude.
Yeah, because he beat him in 2019.
Yeah, but then he didn't play him in 2020. But then if Harbaugh's
you're saying he would only have. You're saying that if he wins, you're saying if he loses Saturday.
Harbaugh,
yeah. He'll only have one win. Yeah.
Even if he wins, Harbaugh's not on the sideline. So he didn't beat Jim Harbaugh. He beat Jerome Moore.
All right. You're playing semantics now. I got you. All right.
I'm just saying,
I mean, I guess technically, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well, we got to get to predictions here. It is Michigan week. You've been saying all year that you think the smelly, filthy, dirty rodents of that team up north are going to beat our Buckeyes, our battle-tested Buckeyes, who have dominated all year long except for against Notre Dame. I think that was – I mean, they just dominated. So what do you – and defensively and physically, not like we used to where we just score 50 points in the first half and then that'd be it. And we'd give up a bunch of points. So how do you see this game playing out? What is your final score prediction? I've been pretty close the last 2 weeks. We'll see how I go this week.
Okay. So this has always been my MO when it comes to this game this week. I never give a prediction. I don't care how awesome Ohio State looks and how crappy Michigan looks. Okay. You're talking to somebody who came up in the John Cooper era. Okay. And even remember some Earl Bruce games, but especially the John Cooper era where there were some Buckeye teams that absolutely were head and shoulders better than the Rodents. And they lost. They look like, now I get it, that a different coach, different era. Jimmy T came in, completely changed that philosophy. He was the one that sparked. At any rate, yes, at the beginning of the year, I called Ohio State to have 3 losses, and one of them being team up north. And it's still possible because this Michigan, I said it. This Michigan team, the Smelly Rodents team, Teton. I'm going to try and backtrack like Cade Stover on Wednesday when he dropped an F-bomb and then tried to cover it up with a bunch of holy molies. Me personally, this is going to be a Donnybrook. This is going to be a defensive, just smash mouth, just knee knocking, gut busting slugfest. I think points are going to come at a premium. Like Dan was saying, this is just a completely different defense this year. You know, we've talked about it too. This is going to be the test. Yeah, this is it, man. This is it. Penn State was not a test. Hell, I think they had a better test at Rutgers than they did at home against Penn State. I think right now the biggest test that Notre Dame, obviously. Notre Dame was the biggest test that they've had so far this year. And I would say Rutgers is second, you know, and this is going to be the top test. Obviously, this is it, right? This is the penultimate. But I think it's going to be just a dirty, gritty, grinded out, smash mouth, points coming out of premium kind of game. And if Ohio State is going to win, it's going to have to be on the defensive side of the ball. The defense is going to have to create opportunities for this offense because, yes, even though Kyle McCord has been efficient enough, he's got to be 100%. And against this kind of defense, I am a little nervous now about seeing what Kyle McCord can do. And this is, I mean, they're a smart defense. Are they going to have Ohio State signs or not? I don't know. Was yesterday or Saturday's game against Maryland a sign that they were indeed stealing signs because they could barely beat Maryland? Yeah, like Dan said, I mean, you don't want to sit here and, prognosticate and surmise that was the case. But ultimately, this is still a phenomenal lights out defense. And if Ohio State can't at least run the ball, chew up the clock, and play great defense and try to remain as mistake-free as possible, it will be a long game for Ohio State. I could almost see it coming down to what it was last year, where Michigan just dominated. It's going to take up here for Ohio State to win this game. And all the soft talk, all that stuff, they have to use that as motivation. And like you said, we have seen a tougher, more physical team really since that Notre Dame game. I think they have used that as fuel and fodder. And, I was talking to somebody in the press box last night about if you don't think that the kids on the team aren't on social media and seeing all the Michigan fans, I said it again, all the rodent fans, dissing Ohio State and Ohio soft and, all that kind of talk. Yeah, trust me, they're all seeing that kind of stuff go down. All right. And I hope they are absolutely taking it to heart and they just wear their emotions on their sleeve and they come out just pissed off, because we need to see an absolutely pissed off Ohio State team on Saturday, or else, once again, it could be a long game. But ultimately, I think that's what we're going to see. And I think we are going to see one of the greater Ohio State games, Ohio State smelly rodent games we've seen some great ones, right? I mean, 2016 was unbelievable. Double overtime, the only overtime game ever in the history of the game. 06, a 3-point win for the Buckeyes, and both teams were number 1, number 2 undefeated in the country. I mean, this game is probably it's probably even more hyped, I would say, because of all the stuff going on and because social media being as it is now than it was back in 2006. I mean, 2006 social media certainly did not exist like it does today. And if social media did exist back in 06, I mean, we'd probably have a ton of hype. But I mean, that game was still way hyped up. This is probably even more so in my mind. Even though it's number 2 versus number 3, or at least at this point, it's number 2 and number 3. I'm assuming Ohio State and Michigan aren't going to, Ohio State and the Rodents, aren't going to hop Georgia in the playoff rankings. But yeah, this is going to be a good one, man. I'm starting to get fired up. Look at my arms here, man. Look at the hair standing on end. No prediction. Nope. I'm too superstitious to make a prediction. No, but once again, I think it's going to be a low-scoring, dirty, gritty, grinded out, and whoever wins, it's not going to be by more than a touchdown. I seriously believe that. I know the last 2 games, Ohio State, got trounced for whatever reason, sign stealing, no sign stealing. They still lost, and they looked fairly bad. They looked really bad in last year's loss, and they looked pretty bad 2 years ago up there in Ann Arbor. So I do. I think this is going to come down to a touchdown game either way, and we're going to see a good one.
Yeah, I agree. I think OSU is going to win by 7, maybe even 10. I think OSU is going to.
Well, you see there on the bottom line, Adam's got the Michigan is a 4-point favorite right now.
Yeah, well, it's at home. They should be favorited. But I think Ohio State. Yeah, OSU's going to go in there, and I think they're going to move the ball well. I think we're going to run the ball well. I think I think we're going to go in there and we're going to beat Michigan at their own game, running the ball and good defense, just like we did against Rutgers. I think Rutgers is going to be a great preview of what the game against Michigan is going to be. Because I don't know if you saw Rutgers they gave Penn State a hell of a time last night.
I think they still lost like 27-9 or something, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, but it was like early on. I mean, like Rutgers they're not Michigan. But again, I had said to you last week, like I'm going to be interested to see how Penn State coming off that Michigan loss plays against Rutgers.
Yeah.
So I say it's going to be 24-14 Buckeyes.
Okay. Yeah, here's the thing. Let's see what J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards look like. I'm interested to see how Ohio State's offense responds to the Rodents, or excuse me, Ohio State's defense responds to the Rodents offense, because J.J. McCarthy has been wildly efficient this year. I mean, like wildly efficient. Like he leads the Big Ten. It might be down a little bit after yesterday's game. He didn't have a great game, but he was still like in the, I don't know. He was leading the Big Ten with like a 199 efficiency at one point. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And Kyle McCord was second at like a 160 something. So they need to put pressure on J.J. McCarthy. And be able to clog the box and contain them. You're not going to stop even Michigan's offense. I mean, they're not a high flying, prolific offense, but man, can they run the ball? And as we saw last year, and even in games this year, J.J. McCarthy can sling the rock. He can, and he's got some wheels. He can slip out of the pocket. I don't know if they want to run a spy on him or not, but hopefully they can contain him and keep him inside, which Ohio State has done a good job this year. They've had kind of like that cage defense where the defensive line not necessarily trying to sack the quarterback right away, but just contain him at first. And then the coverage has been so great on the back end that they've been able to get to the quarterback at times. Not as often as we'd like to have seen this year, but still. If they can cage J.J. McCarthy and they can somehow, clog up those running lanes and don't let Corum and Edwards run loose, Ohio State's got a great chance to win. They do. But if they don't do that and we see J.J. McCarthy have the kind of performance like he did last year, where he only completed 12 passes, but it was for like 265 yards and 5 touchdowns or something ridiculous. And they had their 5 scoring plays, their 5 touchdowns were 45 yards or more. And I think they had 6 total plays of like over 30 yards last year. So if Ohio State obviously lets them do that again, they're done. They're dead. The defense needs to come with it. And getting Tommy Eichenberg back is huge.
Yeah. And guys need to hit hard. I want to see more. I want to see some big plays from Jack Sawyer and JT Tuamo. I mean, just our defense, man. Everybody's playing well. I just want to see him step up the intensity against the team up north and really hit him in the mouth, man. JJ hasn't really been hit. Blake Corum, we saw take a big shot in Penn State, and he kept running. That dude's tough as shit. So we just need to hit him hard and know he's going to run hard, but hey, we just keep hitting them hard. Our defense is eventually going to wear them down. And I think offensively, It's the same thing. Let's just keep attacking them up front and let's see how good that defense really is. They haven't played any offense this year. The best offense they played was last week against Maryland. So I'm just saying, like, Michigan hasn't seen an offense. Our offense is firing. I mean, we got multiple weapons. All of our targets are back. Let's just play smart football, though. Open up the passing at the run. One thing I did want to say, which I texted you as soon as I saw it, that awesome fake. There was a great fake when he threw the ball to Xavier Johnson. I think it was a play action. The camera on Big Ten Network got faked out. I was like, this is what I'm talking about. Carry
Hey,
out
you know what? The touchdown pass to Cade, they handed off to Dallin Hayden the play before. He stopped at the goal line. They brought in Chip, which was a great ploy because at that point you think, oh, Dallin couldn't punch it in. They're bringing in the bowling ball. Let's see if, Chip can punch his way in. And he play faked to Chip, and Cade was wide open there in the corner of the end zone.
Chip
that was a beautiful play fake.
Doesn't matter. Like, if you don't run hard on your fake as a running back, there's no point in running a play action. And that's the thing with Chip, is he's going to run hard no matter what. He just doesn't run through holes. So, so that's where I'm at. Andy, we got to wrap up the show. We're over on time.
Woo! Hey,
so everybody,
as always, man. As always, this has been a beautiful
we're
ride.
Call each other and talk for 5 hours this week about this game. But everybody, thank you for tuning in. Dan Hope, shout out to Dan Hope. Thank you for your input. Everyone, check out his work. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Drew Sample, and he is
at Andy's Wired.
There you go. And we will see you guys next weekend, hopefully celebrating. I'll have a cigar in my mouth, and I'll be celebrating a win.
Hey, big